Hello everyone and welcome to the biology lecture series, and today we'll be discussing the topic control and coordination. So we have already discussed in the previous lecture about the coordination, how can we define coordination. Then we studied about the movements in the plants, okay, where we studied about the stimulus, external stimulus as well as the internal stimulus, and how the plant responds to this stimulus. Okay, then we also studied about the coordination in the animals. Okay, apart from this, we also studied about the phytohormones and what were their roles. And we also studied about the endocrine system, which comprises of all the endocrine glands. And we studied about the functions of the hormones, which are secreted by the endocrine glands as well. Okay, then in the previous lecture, we studied about the nervous system of Hydra as well as the nervous system of the grasshopper. Alright, so now in this lecture, we'll be studying about the nervous system in the humans. Okay, so humans are complex organisms, so they have complex nervous system. And in this lecture, we'll be going to study about the nervous system. So the nervous system of the human being is consist of central and the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so basically the nervous system comprises of the two parts. One is the central nervous system and other one is the peripheral nervous system. Clear? Now, one more type of nervous system is also present, known as the autonomous nervous system, that you can say is a part of the peripheral nervous system. Now, what is neuron? We have already discussed. Neuron is the structural and the functional unit of the nervous system. Okay, neuron is also known as the nerve cell. Okay, and the structure of the neuron we have already discussed. Okay, briefly, we'll discuss the structure again here in this lecture. Now, it is the longest cell found in the body. Okay, so whenever you see the structure of the nerve cell, you can see it is quite elongated. So it is the longest cell found in the body. Now, what is the role of these neurons? They unite the receptor and the effector organs with each other. Okay, what are receptor? These are the cluster of cell that detects the stimulus. Okay, so stimulus can be changed in the temperature, okay, or touch. So these are the external stimulus. Okay, and these are detected by the receptors which are present, you can say, on the body surface or just beneath the body surface. Okay, or they are present in the skin. Okay, clear? Now these receptors, they detect the stimulus, and what happens? What are effectors organs? Effectors organs are the organs, and why they are known as effectors organ? Because they cause an effect in response to a stimuli. Okay, so the effect is generated, okay, in response to the stimulus in these effector organs. Clear? Now, the nervous system is composed of neurons. So we already know that the nervous system, what is the functional and the structural unit of nervous system? It is neurons. Now, these are surrounded by a connective tissue known as the neuroglia. Okay, neuroglia, acts as a supportive tissue. Alright, it acts as a supportive tissue. Okay, we'll study about the functions of the neuroglia in the upcoming slides. Now, impulses from the receptors, they run through the neurons. Okay, this we have already know. These electrical impulses or the nerve impulses, okay, these are generated by the receptors, and the receptors consist of this nerve cells, and these impulses, they run through the neuron. So one neuron is connected to the another neuron. Alright, now the number of the neurons are almost fixed for a particular species. And there's one more characteristic feature of neurons, that they don't divide. Alright, these nerve cells, they don't divide. Clear? Now let's talk about the functions of the neuroglia. Okay, in the previous slide we were talking about the neuroglia. So what are the functions? They provide the structural support. So what happens? These glial cells, they help maintain the structure of the nervous system by holding neurons in place. So that's how they provide structural support. Okay. Now, second function is insulating the neurons. How do they insulate neurons? So the glial cells, they produce the myelin. Okay. In the previous lecture, I've shown you the structure of the neuron. So there was a myelin sheath. Okay. So this myelin sheath, they are produced by these glial cells. And what is the function of this myelin sheath? This myelin sheath insulates the neuron. Okay. It insulates the neuron or the nerve cell, and this insulation is very much important for the efficient conduction of the nerve impulse. Alright, so why this insulation is necessary? This insulation is necessary for the efficient, or you can say fast, conduction of the nerve impulses. So you can see the response is very fast. So if there is a hot object, okay, that is touching your finger, then you immediately remove it. That's why the conduction of the nerve impulse should be very fast. And this myelin sheath, this insulates the neurons, and this insulation helps in the fast conduction of what? Of the nerve impulse. Okay, this is clear. Now, this nerve impulse or the conduction of nerve impulse, okay, it takes place from one node of NV. So it jumps. Okay, so there is a jumping mechanism known as the saltatory mechanism. So nerve impulses jumps from one node of Ranvier to another node of Ranvier. And what are node of Ranvier? They are produced where the myelin sheath is absent. Okay, so this glial cell, they produce the myelin, which is a fatty substance that wraps around the axons. So axon, they are the part of the neuron. Okay, and this axons are covered by this myelin sheath, and this myelin sheath insulates the axon, you can say, or the neurons, and helps in the fast conduction of the nerve impulses. Clear? We'll talk about this nodes of Ranvier and the conduction in the upcoming slides. Now, next role is supporting the neuronal repair. So these glial cells, they are also involved in the repair and the regeneration of the damaged neurons. Neurons, they don't divide. Okay, and we have seen in the previous slide, number of neurons are also fixed in a particular organisms, but they can be repaired. So the repair and regeneration of the damaged neuron takes place, okay, by these glial cells. So these are the important functions of the neuroglia. Clear? And there are some other functions, that the transport of the nutrients also. Clear? Across the neuron, you can say. Now this is the typical structure of the neuron. So here you can see these are the dendrites. Okay, and then this is the cell body. Okay, what is this? This is the cell body. Alright, it has the nucleus. Okay, then Nissel's granules are present. This is the axon, which is covered by the myelin sheath. So this is the myelin sheath, which are produced by the glial cells. Then this is the node of the Ranvier. What is node of Ranvier? Node of Ranvier is a region. Node of Ranvier is a region where the myelin sheath is absent. Okay, this is the region where myelin sheath is absent. This is clear? This region is known as the node of the Ranvier. Clear? And what happens? This myelin sheath insulates the axon or the neuron, and then what happens? This helps in the faster conduction of the nerve impulses. So the nerve impulse, it travels from one node to the another node. Okay, like this, one node to the another node. Okay, so because of this jumping, so it jumps from one node to another node. So because of this jumping, the conduction of the nerve impulse is very fast, and this is known as the saltatory mechanism. This is known as the saltatory mechanism. Alright, this is clear. So this is the structure of the neuron. And these dendrites, these are connected with the synaptic knob of the another neuron. Okay, so these are the axon terminals, and then in the end we have the synaptic knob. We'll talk about all of these in the upcoming slides. Now let's talk about the structure of the neuron. Okay, now neuron, first of all, they do not divide. Alright, and if you talk about the structure of the neuron, each neuron consists of the cell body, which is known as the cyton, and a number of branches known as the nerve fibers, which arise from the cyton. Clear? Now the cyton or the cell body contains a nucleus, okay, which is present within the cytoplasm, and Nisser's granules are also present within this cell body. Now what's our Nisser's granules? They are formed of rough endoplasmic reticulum. So what are rough endoplasmic reticulum? Which consists of the ribosomes. So endoplasmic reticulum that have the ribosome on them, these are known as the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, these are involved in the protein synthesis, rough endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, so it consists of nucleus in the cytoplasm and Nisser granules and fine thread-like fibers known as the neurofibrils. Clear? Now let's talk about the dendrites first. What are dendrites? So these are short, several, and much branched and contain granules. Clear? So it was a branch structure we have seen in the when we were talking about the structure of the neuron. Now they carry impulses towards the cell body. Clear? Now another part is the axon. So what is axon? It is a large single and unbranched structure. It has no Nisser granules and it carries impulses from cyton to the effector organ. Okay, what are effector organ? Examples are the glands as well as the muscles. So these are the examples of the effector organs. What is an effector organ? Organ which show the effect that is generated in response to the stimulus. Okay, so whenever this muscle will receive the motor information from the spinal cord, you can say, then this muscle can move. Okay, it will contract or it will relax, and what will occur? Then the person can remove their hand, okay, if they are touching any hot object. Now it is a typical nerve fiber consisting of a central thin cytoplasm, cylindrical axis, continuous with the body. Okay, so it is continuous with the cell body. Clear? Now the cytoplasm of the axon is known as the exoplasm. Clear? And the axis cylinder is enclosed in a thin permeable membrane called the axolemma or the nerve membrane. Clear? This we have already talked about. A layer of the fatty material known as the myelin, which are produced by the glial cells. Okay, so a layer of fatty material called myelin or the medullary sheath is found outside the axolemma. Clear? And we have already discussed the role of the myelin. It helps to insulate the neuron or the axon. Now, the fibers that contain the myelin sheath, they are known as the myelinated or medullated fibers. Alright, now they appear white. Clear? Because of the presence of the myelin. Now these nerve fibers lacking the myelin sheath, they are known as the non-myelinated fiber, non-myelinated neurons, and they appear gray in the color. Clear? So you can say neurons are of two types, myelinated as well as the non-myelinated as well as non-myelinated. Myelinated one appears white in color and non-myelinated appears gray in color. Now, I've told you about the nodes of Ranvier. So this myelin is interrupted at intervals by some constrictions which are known as the nodes of the Ranvier. So these nodes of the Ranvier, I've already told you, they are the constrictions which are present in the area where the myelin sheath is absent. Okay, the myelin sheath is absent. Okay, and this I've already told you, this nerve impulse, it travels from one node to the another node. So this is a jumping, you can say, mechanism, also known as the saltatory conduction. Okay, so this helps in the fast movement of the nerve impulses. Clear? So what is the role of the nodes of Ranvier? They help in the propagation of the nerve impulses, or you can say fast propagation of the nerve impulses. Now, the terminal branches of the axon, they are known as the telodendria. And each telodendrion, they end in a swollen knob known as the synaptic knob, also known as the terminal button. Okay, so first we talked about the dendrites, then we talked about the cell body. Okay, so cell body, it gives rise to the dendrites only, and axon, it is attached to the cell body. Okay, and axons we have discussed, it's covered by the myelin sheath, and the branches of the axon, they are known as the telodendria, and the swollen end of the telodendria, these are known as the synaptic knob. Now the synaptic knob of one fiber, okay, means of the axon, it forms a synapse with the dendrites of the another neuron. Clear? So we have already seen in the structure of the neuron that the dendrites, so if this is the axon, okay, you can see in the end it was branched. Okay, it was branched. At the ends were swollen. These are known as the synaptic knob. These are known as the synaptic knob. Okay, and these forms, you can say, connection with the dendrites of the another neuron. So here we have the dendrites. Okay, this is the cell body. Okay, again this is the axon. Okay, its end has this synaptic knobs. Okay, I'm drawing a very rough sketch of a neuron. So here it has the dendrites. Okay, so these dendrites, they connect with this synaptic knob here. Okay, so synaptic knob, and these are the dendrites. Okay, so the synaptic knob and the dendrites, they forms the synapses, and this is very important for the conduction of the nerve impulses. So this is how the nerve impulse are transmitted from one nerve to the another nerve by the formation of the synapse, and synapse is formed between the synaptic knob and the dendrites of another axon. So dendrite of, you can write axon 2, synaptic knob of axon 1. Okay, this is clear. Now, what is the synapse? So synapse is a very fine gap between two neurons. Thus, the entire nervous system or you can say this is how the entire the neurons are linked together in the nervous system. Now let's talk about the types of the neurons or the nerve fibers. So there are two types of neurons, motor neurons as well as the sensory neurons. So what is a motor neuron? I've already discussed about the motor neuron in the previous lecture as well. So these motor neurons, it carries the impulses from brain and the spinal cord. Okay, so these are the part of the central nervous system, brain and the spinal cord, to the effector organs. Alright, these are known as the motor neurons. Clear? Another one is the sensory neuron. So it transmits impulses from the sensory organ to the central nervous system, means to the brain as well as the spinal cord. Clear? So the sensory neuron, this is also known as the afferent. This is also known as afferent neuron. Whereas the motor neuron, it is also known as efferent. This is known as the efferent neuron. Okay, this is clear. Now this is an image showing you the efferent as well as the afferent neuron, or you can say the sensory neuron or the motor neuron. So these are the afferent neuron. You can see whenever the finger of the human any organism, it touches the hot object, then so this acts as a stimulus. This hot object, this acts as a stimulus. So this is a kind of external stimulus. Then here the external stimulus is transferred to the central nervous system. So you can see this is the spinal cord here. Okay, the central nervous system consists of both spinal cord and the brain. Here the impulses, the signal or the stimulus is being transferred to the spinal cord by the afferent neuron. So the afferent neuron, this is also known as the sensory neuron. Okay, then the efferent neuron, also known as the motor neuron. So this brings back the response. Okay, the response is generated in the central nervous system, and the efferent neuron, it brings back the response to the effector organ. So here muscles, these are the effector organ or the effector site, you can say. Here. So now these sensory neuron as well as the motor neuron, these are connected through the interneuron. So interneuron is present here within the spinal cord, you can say, or the central nervous system. So first we have the sensory neuron. Then we have the interneuron that connects the two. And then in the end we have the motor neuron. Okay, so these are the types of neuron. What was the role of sensory neuron? So it passes on the stimulus, or it detects the stimulus. Okay, and then it transfers the stimulus to the central nervous system. Then what happens? Interneuron connects this both sensory and the motor neuron, and the motor neuron, it brings back the response to the effector organ. Clear? Now let's talk about the types of the nervous system. So there are basically, so in the previous lecture we have discussed, in the beginning we have discussed, the nervous systems basically consist of the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So there is one more nervous system known as the autonomous nervous system, that is a part of peripheral nervous system, you can say. Clear? Now let's discuss about all of this nervous system. So let's first start with the central nervous system. So central nervous system is consists of the brain as well as the spinal cord. Okay, and the brain is covered by the cranium and the spinal cord is covered by the vertebral column. Clear? So this these cranium as well as the vertebral column, they protect the brain and the spinal cord respectively. Clear? Now this is a typical structure of the brain. So you can see you have to first remember all these terms. Okay, cerebral hemisphere, then thalamus we have talked about. Thalamus is present here. Here you can see. All right, these structures. Okay, medulla oblongata here is present. This region is known as the pons. So first you have to remember these terms. Then we'll discuss about these terms. Hypothalamus again is present here. Optic chiasmata I have told you in the previous lecture. Infundibulum. So it is a stalk. Okay, then pituitary gland is attached through this infundibule to the hypothalamus. This also we have discussed. Okay, so this is the structure of the brain, or you can say structure of the human brain. Okay, now both of these, they are surrounded by the three membranes of the connective tissue called the meninges. Clear? Now there are three kinds of this meninges. First, outermost layer is known as the dura mater, middle is known as the arachnoid, and the innermost is known as the pia mater. Alright, now the space between the membranes, it is filled with the fluid called the cerebrospinal fluid. And what is the role of the cerebrospinal fluid? It protects the brain from the mechanical shocks. Clear? Now the brain can be differentiated into three main regions: midbrain, hindbrain, as well as the forebrain. So forebrain, midbrain, and the hindbrain. Clear? Now first let's talk about the forebrain. The forebrain, it consists of the olfactory lobes, cerebrum, as well as the diencephalon. Now this diencephalon. Let's first talk about the olfactory lobes. So these are a pair of small, solid, cube-shaped bodies. Okay, and they are fully covered by the cerebellum. So they receive impulses for smell. That's why the name olfactory. So this olfactory is related to the term smell. Now let's talk about the cerebrum. So cerebrum, it is the largest part of the brain, and it consists of two cerebral hemispheres joined by a band of nerve fibers called as the corpus callosum. Okay, cerebellum, this is the longest part of the brain, and it consists of two hemispheres. So cerebral is related to brain. Okay, so it consists of two cerebral hemispheres which are joined together by a band of the nerve fibers known as corpus callosum. Now the surface of the cerebral hemisphere is made up of grey matter known as the cerebral cortex. Okay, this is clear. The grey matter is present here. Alright, and the grey matter consists of parts of the neurons only, and it also consists of the glial cells. Okay, now it becomes highly folded to increase the area for accommodation of more neurons. So this area is quite folded so that more neurons can be accumulated, and more numbers of neurons means better control and coordination, as well as fast control and coordination. Now the folds are called gyri, and the depressions between them, okay, the folds are called the gyri, and the depression between them, they are known as the sulcus or the sulci. Okay, so depressions are known as the sulci and the folds are known as gyri. Now deep and wide sulci are called fissures. Okay, fissures are what? They are the grooves, you can say. They are deep grooves. Okay, you can say very deep grooves that divide you can say brain or the spinal cord into two hemispheres or two halves. So this is the role of the fissures. They divide the brain or the spinal cord into two hemisphere or halves. Now fissures divide each cerebral hemisphere into 4 lobes. Now optical lobe, frontal lobe, parietal lobe, as well as the temporal lobe. What is occipital lobe? Region for the visual perception. What is frontal lobe? For muscular activities. Parietal lobe for touch, smell, temperature, and conscious association. And temporal lobe is associated with the auditory reception. Now the cerebrum has the sensory areas where impulses are received from the sense organs, which are known as the receptors. Okay, sense organs are known as the receptors, which are present on the body surface or the skin, okay, such as pain receptors. Okay, one examples are the pain receptors. Now, similarly, it has a general motor area from where impulses are sent to effector organs such as muscles and the glands. So these are muscles and glands. These are the effector organs. And effector organs we have already discussed. They, or you can say, the effect is generated, okay, in these organs. Clear? In response to the stimulus. Now, what is diencephalon? It encloses the cavity called the third ventricle. It consists of thalamus as well as the hypothalamus. Now, thalamus serves as the relay center for sensory and the motor impulses from spinal cord and medulla oblongata to the cerebrum. It recognizes sensory impulses for heat, cold, pain, light as well as the pressure. Now, the floor of the third ventricle is known as the hypothalamus. It possesses control center for hunger, thirst, thermoregulation, sleep, sex as well as the stress. So all these activities are controlled by the, you can say, hypothalamus. Okay, so hypothalamus also plays a role in maintaining the homeostasis. Okay, what is homeostasis? Maintenance of a steady state. Okay, this is known as homeostasis. So example is thermoregulation, means maintenance of the temperature of the body. Now let's talk about the midbrain. It consists of two heavy fibers known as the cruca cerebri. Now these tracts connect the forebrain to the hindbrain, and these are the center for control of eye movement and hearing responses. Now third is the hindbrain. It consists of the cerebellum, which is very large and very well developed. It controls the coordination and adjustment of the movement and the posture as well. Another one is the pons varolii. Now it lies above the medulla oblongata and it controls some aspects of the respiration. Now let's talk about medulla oblongata. It is the posterior most part of the brain and continues into the spinal cord. It controls involuntary functions of the body such as heart rate, rate of breathing, secretion of saliva, swallowing, coughing, sneezing as well as vomiting. So all these activities, these are the involuntary activities. They are not under our control. They happen by themselves. Now let's talk about the spinal cord. Okay, so central nervous consists of the brain as well as the spinal cord. So it lies in the vertebral column and it starts from the medulla oblongata and extends downward. It is also protected by three meninges, okay, and the cerebrospinal fluid. It also acts as a center for the spinal reflexes. Clear? So with this, we end this lecture. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll continue about the types of the nervous system in the next session. Thank you very much for listening.